Happy New Year, and I hope you had a great Christmas. G'day, and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura. We would like to start by thanking Enduro for their support in bringing you our weekly Q&A. Tonight, we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Kevin Howell from Karana Kelpie Stud.
Kevin will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they will win a bag of Enduro Plus, high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
Hey, Kevin, how you going?
Good, thank you.
That's good. Do you want to start off by...
I'd like to congratulate you two for this, for what you're doing. It's a great thing, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for jumping on.
How was your Christmas, mate, and how's the start to your new year, mate?
Christmas and New Year was good. We had a few COVID scares, but I think everybody's getting those at the moment.
Yeah.
Please, do you want to start off by telling us a bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up on a farm. My father was a farmer, and he was a real dog man. He always had a heap of dogs around him. He didn't care what breed they were, as long as they worked sheep. He'd even been known to pick dogs up in town that were strays and take them home and then teach them to work sheep. And yeah, he was quite a good dog man. Never ever trialled, but I'm sure that I inherited his interest in dogs because I've always been interested in dogs all my life. So I grew up on the farm, went to school at Ugara, which is a little town, 600 odd people. Then my secondary schooling, my parents sent me away to college at Bathurst for 3 years. What I liked most about that was the sport. Wasn't so keen on the bookwork. Anyway, I left school at 16, went back home to help my father on the farm. Did a wool classing course through Tech at the same time. Then learnt to shear. So between working at home on the farm and then off-farm shearing and off-farm wool classing, and that's how I started off as a young fellow with working stock. And my father had two different properties. One was in the Plains country. Then he had another one up in the Granite Hills at Ugara. So I know about, be 15 kilometres apart, I guess, about that. So we had to have different types of dogs for both areas. And that was where I learnt that a dog had to have a good cast and be careful to be able to work the sheep in the hilly country. It was much easier on the flat country, but because you could drive all over it, but the other one you couldn't drive all over it at all. You could only drive in certain places. So the dog had to do most of it, which showed me that the ability that dogs have got. They were only crossbred dogs, and I never got into the purebred dogs until I was around about 40, which is around about 40 years ago. That gives away my age, doesn't it?
Oh, just a little.
Yeah, anyway, that's a little bit about me. I went to the field day at Orange is what first started me in the purebred dogs. I had crossbred dogs up till then. And went to a demonstration at the field day of purebred Kelpies. Got talking to the people, stayed there all day tormenting them, asking them questions, and finished up buying a pup off them. And that's where my career in the Australian working Kelpie started.
Pretty good story to tell, mate. And you're still out at Ugara, aren't you? Yourself and Kay out there these days?
Yeah, still at Ugara. We're about 13 k's out of Ugara on the opposite side to where I was brought up. We're more towards Canowindra. And I'm in the hilly country again, which I like, hilly country, with good valleys. But we've sold most of our property now and to semi-retire. That's been happening now for about 7 years, I think it is.
Yep.
But we've still got enough country to run about 200 to 300 sheep. We were lucky enough to be able to sell the better country to the neighbour who wanted to grow crop on, and we could keep the house block and the shearing sheds and the sheep yards. which allowed me to continue on with the Kelpie stud, which is what my interest is nowadays, is to continue on to the Kelpie stud, breed good dogs, compete at trials, and go and enjoy myself working the dogs in competitions.
So what's an average day look like for Kevin Howell?
Get up in the morning, let the big dogs out into their big day run, go inside, have breakfast, come back out, feed the pups, and then get the rake and the shovel and clean up after the pups. A lot of time spent cleaning up after dogs. Yeah, that's one of the not so good parts of it. But when you go out there and the dogs all love to see you and want to jump on you and want to play with you, and pups want to chew your socks and all that sort of stuff, that's what makes it really enjoyable to me. Because dogs are my mates, and well, if you've got a dog with you, you're never lonely.
Very true.
Yeah.
So you do bit of training during the day as well?
Try and fit some training in between other things. Yeah. Well, when COVID was on, I went crazy and put in a veggie garden, so that keeps me fairly busy as well. Kay's got a nice flower garden, so we've got to keep that in shape as well. And with all this rain, you mow the lawn one day and it looks like it needs mowing again the next day. Everything's grown that well.
And when you were working, mate, what were you doing for work, and how were you using your dogs in the day-to-day life then?
I had a fairly mixed working life. I was a share farmer, and growing wheat on other people's properties. And between that, I'd go home and help my father on the farm, and that's when I needed the dogs to help him on the farm. And then at one stage, I took over one of his farms. I took over the Hill farm, and I needed the dogs there. But most of that was only in between shearing. After, like if you had a wet day or something like that, you'd go out and do some work on the farm. Or at weekends, you'd go and do some work on the farm with the dogs. But when I was shearing, the dogs had to stay at home because you couldn't take your dogs to the other farmer's place. So it was a bit of a mixed way I did everything. But my farm wasn't big enough to make enough money off by itself, so that's why I had to go share farming and shearing and wool casting. So I did a little bit of everything to make money, and anyway, we got through and enjoyed life, and I got to the stage where I am now, and I'm really enjoying life now with the dogs and relaxing a bit more and with not having to work so hard.
Did you need a different or a particular type of dog because you weren't on the property all the time, and with the workload you're doing, working through on different properties?
Yeah, I always liked a dog that would cast well and muster by itself. I could actually send dogs into hill country and they'd go and find the stock themselves. So I've always looked for that dog ever since. These are only crossbred dogs that my father gave me, but they were a cross between border collies and kelpies. But they had that natural instinct to be able to do that. And when I changed over to the purebred kelpies, I was always looking for that dog that had the good cast and the ability to search for sheep in hill country. And then when I started going to trials, I realised that you had to teach your dog a little bit more when you started doing yard work, because until I started trialling, I never ever had a dog that would back sheep.
Yeah.
I just did with the dogs barking up the side. But then I was told that the dog had to back sheep if you want to be successful at a trial. So I started teaching my old crossbred dogs to back sheep, and they took to it like ducks to water. And I started doing pretty well with old crossbred dogs. And then I gradually got more and more kelpies, and the old crossbred dogs faded out with old age, and then the purebred kelpies took over.
And were you using your... You're all right, mate? Keep going.
Sorry, dude.
No, keep going.
I was lucky enough to be able to buy an old, very well-bred old bitch Barrenbogie Tracy, who was by Barrenbogie Mac out of White's Tracy. and I took her to Chris Stapleton's place to Capri watch, and that's where I got my first champion dog from, Karana Seiko, and he won the National Kelpie Trial for me. He won the New South Wales Yard Dog Championships. He won heaps and heaps of other championships, and he was just a fantastic dog at home. And he taught me that a dog didn't have to be racing around barking and carrying on all the time to move stock. He just did it all with his own presence and strength. He was just a very, very dominant type dog on stock, but he did it all very calmly. So I've looked for that trait in all my other dogs ever since.
And you still got a lot of Seiko in your blood today?
Yeah, it's getting thinner now, of course, but it's still on both sides of the pedigrees of all the dogs that I'm breeding nowadays. It's a long way back now, but it's still in there.
So tell us a little bit about your current team you've got there at the moment.
I'm pretty happy with the current team I've got at the moment. I've always aimed at breeding utility type dogs, and the dogs I've got at the moment are what I would call utility dogs. They're not a straight out yard dog, and they're not a three sheep type dog. They're a dog that you can do a three sheep trial with them, you can do a yard trial with them, and you can do a utility trial with them, which means that they're a very, very good dog at home on all sorts of different situations. Because we have, where we are now, some of the country we kept is fairly hilly country, and if the stock get in there, you need a pretty good dog to get them back out again. And I don't go up there looking for stock. The dog's got to do that. So I send the dog up there and let them bring them out.
And why did you turn to the purebred Kelpies? Why didn't you steer towards the purebred collies?
My first dog was a collie when I first left school, when I was 16. She was a beautiful dog, had her all her life until she died of old age. And she was that faithful that when I met Kay, this dog would walk between us and not let us walk together. If we ever went for a walk, this little border collie bitch would walk between us so that we couldn't actually walk right side by side. She was a lovely dog and very talented dog, but she was only a paddock dog only. She was very soft when it went to yard work. The main reason why I went to the Kelpie was because it's the Australian dog, I thought, and they're very, very beautiful looking dog. They're shorter haired because I had trouble with the first dog I had because of the long haired dog. I had trouble with the grass seeds in its feet. So I thought I'd go for the Kelpie that had the lot cleaner feet and shorter coat, which made them much more suitable for the Australian conditions, I thought.
Yep.
And and you probably notice that most border collies nowadays have been converted over to the short coat too, so they've seen the advantage of that as well.
Absolutely. And you're right. Yeah.
What do you like about the breeding these days? You obviously do a bit.
I like to do different matings to see what comes from it. And with a stud, you have to go to outside dogs every now and then because you can't keep breeding to your own dogs all the time, otherwise you become too inbred. So that's one reason why I like going to trials as well, to try and pick out some dogs that I really like and maybe use them as a sire. And then you wait till the pups grow up and see what their ability is, and if that works out, it works out. If it doesn't, well, you don't try that one again. You go somewhere else.
And what do you?
But we have had some very good out crosses, which has worked very well for us.
Yep.
Tony Parsons, the man that wrote all the books, Karawara stud, he loaned us. He was good enough to loan us a bitch that we bred from. I put my old Corona Duke over her. And we bred Corona Sammy, and Sammy won a national copy trial for me. Then she had 2 sons. One of those sons won a national copy trial, and the other one won 3 national copy trials.
Yeah,
So
right.
that was a real success story going out to the Carrawara stud. And the reason why I was keen to go to Carrawara was because of their renowned ability to cast and the natural breakout that the dogs had in them. And that breakout, even though they were joined to my line of Kelpies, the progeny from that mating still had the natural breakout, which is something that I really like. I don't know whether your listeners understand what breakout is, but would you like me
Do
to
you want to
explain
explain
that?
that? Yeah, 100%, please, mate.
Righto. Breakout is when dogs are working sheep and the sheep tries to break. Instead of the dog running to the shoulder to get there as quick as it can to head the sheep off, it actually breaks away from the sheep and gets further out. That allows the sheep to go a little bit further, but it guarantees that the dogs are going to finish up in front of it and not alongside of it, chasing it further away. So the sheep actually slows down because the dog's breaking away from it until the dog then curls around and gets around in front of the sheep and pulls the sheep up and brings the sheep back nice and calmly. Whereas if a dog hasn't got breakout and the sheep takes off in a hurry and the dog tries to catch it and he's only running beside its shoulder, he's only making the sheep run away faster. So that's why I like breakout.
Explained very well, mate.
Thanks, Dan.
We've got a few questions here. Laura's going to jump on a couple here.
One here from Chris Egan. When breeding or looking at outside lines, do you have anyone in particular you bounce ideas or ask opinions of?
Sorry, I missed that. I missed the last half.
That's all right. When you're looking for outside lines, do you have anyone in particular that you bounce ideas off or ask their opinion?
Yeah, my good the good one I bounce everything off, my wife Kay.
That's the right answer, I think.
She's my greatest supporter and she's my greatest critic. So if I've got a dog that I like and it's got some fault and I'm too blind to see it, she will point that out to me, because sometimes I'm a little bit favour some dogs sometimes because I like them.
How does she break that news to you, mate? Nice and softly, nice and gently, I hope?
No, she's not real good at breaking things softly. That's all right.
Another question here from Kane Gardner. What's some of the outside dogs you like and have used most recently that have worked well with your dogs?
Dean Inch's Rafa I used over one of my bitches, and he produced a really nice little bitch for me. She's about 15 months old now. I haven't started trialling her yet. She came on season not long ago, so she's joined now, so she won't be trialling again for a while. But once she rears the pups, I'll have her out trialling, and yeah, that was a good mating for me. She's got Rafa's strength, but she got the Corona footwork and balance and cover, so it really worked well. So I'm looking forward to that mating. I've put my very good dog Roy over her. He was a very good utility type dog. So I expect those pups to be very good utility type dogs with strength. So that's the plan anyway. Let's hope it works that way.
Mate, you must spend countless hours up at night time thinking about, litters and what direction you want to go. What are you looking for when thinking about before breeding a litter or considering a future joining?
If I'm using my own dogs to breed a litter, I'll try and complement. If the female lacks a little bit of something, I'll try and use a dog that's a little bit over the top in that area. Say, for example, if the female's a little bit soft, I'll use one of the more aggressive forceful type males, or if it's the other way around, if the female's a little bit aggressive and it works a little bit too close, I'll use one of the male dogs that's got more footwork and more distance to try and average the pups out to what I want. And I breed for what I want. I do sell a lot of pups, but I breed for what I want, and the customers have got to be satisfied with what I want, not with what they want. And most of my farmer clients like the type of dog that I like anyway. That's why they keep coming back.
Where are your pups going, mate? Like you mentioned, farmers there. You do a bit of trialing yourself, or are you finding a variety in homes that your pups are going to?
Most of them are going to farming situations. Yeah, there's not many trialers by dogs. Everybody thinks their own dog's the best, of course.
Yeah.
So there's not many trialers buy pups off me. There are some that come along and bring a female to one of my males to breed a litter. A few trialing fellas are doing that, but there's not very many of them actually buying a pup. They're breeding their own by going away to another dog or something, like doing it that way.
And do you think the farmers that consistently buy dogs off yourself, it's because they've learned how to handle that particular style of dog and to get on with it, and they've created a bond, and they're comfortable with that?
Yeah, we try and breed a dog that's got natural ability, which makes it much easier for the farmer.
Yep.
Like a lot of my clients will ring me up later and say, I never even had to train that dog. It just knew what to do. So that makes it a lot easier for them. And of course, the farmer doesn't need as much perfection as what us trialing people do. So they're happy with, as long as the dog's mustering the sheep and keeping the sheep in a bunch, and then when they get to the yard, they put a bit of pressure on and push them through the yard for them. They're happy with all that.
How do you go about picking a pup for yourself, and has that changed over the years?
It has changed probably in the last 20 years because I've been doing it for that long. Because when I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. When I first started, I started going along to dog trials just to see what people did and what dogs did certain things. And that's how I learned how to trial, just by going along to dog trials and watching. I didn't compete for a fair while. I just went along and worked out what needed to be done, and then went home and tried to do it myself. So that's how I eventually got started trialing. And then I developed an idea of what type of dog I wanted, and it was the utility type dog that I was aiming for. And I think my trialing record has proven that I've been pretty successful at breeding the utility type dog, because I do a little bit of scouting now.
You're right, go for it.
Because
record book speaks for itself, mate.
Because I've won 9 national company trials, which are utility trials, and come second 13 times. So that sort of speaks pretty well for utility type dogs that we've got, I think.
Question here from Chris Egan. Because you have so many good older dogs, how are you choosing the younger dogs to step up next? Are you looking at traits along the way that remind you of older dogs? Are you looking for something better than the older dogs, or are you trusting from the breeding you have done that when you bring a dog on, it's just going to have what you want and need?
Pretty much all of those, Chris. You do look for traits that were in your old dog, in young dog, yeah. One thing that I am aiming for now in my younger dogs is trying a little bit more free bark. But quite often when you go for free bark, you lose that outside ability. So it's a bit of a fine line. No one's got the perfect dog. I haven't got the perfect dog, never have had, but I've had some that I thought were pretty close to it. But yes, that's one thing that I'm working on now, is trying to get a little bit more free bark, but try and still keep that natural paddock work. And I think I've got some young pups there now that are going to fill that bill for me.
And how'd you go about that? Like when you identified or went, oh, I want a bit of free bark, what was your thought process? Like, did you start looking at different outside dogs and?
No, actually, one of the ones that did well for me was I was breeding from a bitch and only using her as a commercial bitch, selling all the pups to farmers, until I started getting some emails back of the pups that I'd sold when they were 2 and 3 years old, and these pups were showing outstanding work. So I thought, well, if they're doing some outstanding work for these people, maybe I should keep 1 or 2 of those ones and look at them. So I have done that. I've kept a litter. The female that I was breeding from, getting old now, she only had 2 pups. So I kept both of those. And they're both completely different in the work style, which is unusual when you do line breeding. You usually get pretty much consistency, but they're both very much different. The little female is very calm and very strong and does all her work with just a walk up. Whereas the male dog he's quite calm too, but as soon as the sheep stop moving, he'll come in and start using his big bark.
Yeah.
Which is what I really like. I'm pretty excited about that with him. You probably know that young dog Ned that I bought back, would you, Dan?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they're the same breeding as what he is. And Ned himself is a very good paddock dog with a very big cast, but he's got virtually no bark. Whereas this young dog is a full brother to him, and he's got that natural bark that he knows when to use it. If sheep stop in a gateway, he's only 5 months old, but if sheep stop in a gateway, he'll come in and he'll put that bark on, and he knows when to use it. And then once the sheep move, he'll move back off again and go quiet again. And I'm pretty happy about that. That's what I've been looking for, and hopefully I found it in this little fella.
So not only you're breeding bark, you're breeding a bit of intelligence there as well.
Oh, he's a smart little fella, yeah.
Yeah. Any advice to anyone going to purchase their first pup?
The sound went a little bit funny there.
That's all right. Any advice to someone wanting to purchase a pup, like their first pup?
Yeah. Try and purchase a pup from someone that you can get a look at the mother and the father if you can, and see if their work style of both the parents are what you want your pup to turn out to be. If you can't actually see the dogs themselves, try and find out a bit about the dogs by asking questions of people that might know, or ask the owner of the sire and the owner of the dam what the dogs are like. And with this modern age of videos, ask for a video, and then you should be able to see the traits in those dogs what you're looking for.
Mate, talking about those traits, who are the most influential dogs that got you to where you are today, and what made them special to you, or makes them, if there's something still currently in your current team?
Milburn Basil was one dog that's had a big influence on our stud. Chris Stapleton's Capri Watch in the early days, he had a big influence as well. And even the original bitch we bought, Baron Tracy, she was by Baron Mac, who in the early days, if you didn't have Baron Mac in your dog, you needed to go somewhere and get some Mac in your dog.
What was so obviously we've heard a few stories about Mac. What made Mac a special dog in your eyes?
His footwork was very good cover. He's a very strong dog. He would back away from nothing. He had a reasonable amount of bite, which would not be tolerated today in the hard trial. But he knew when to use it and knew how to get results. He was a very good dog, and he bred on very well. Some dogs don't breed on, but Mac bred on very well. And Milburn Basil is another dog that bred on very well. And you could breed fairly close with Milburn Basil and still get good results. Like you didn't lose anything by breeding closely.
Yep.
Another dog that had a big influence on our stud was the female Karawara Mallee that Tony Parsons loaned me. She actually put the cast and the breakout in our dogs that we've been able to maintain down through the lines. So the Karawara is my idea of where you go if you want to put cast in your dogs.
In relation to the dogs and bitches in joinings, how closely do you reckon the pups throw back to a dog or back to the bitch? Who do you reckon has most influence?
A lot of people say the female's got more influence than the male, but I'm not too sure about that. We've had a lot of pups throw to the male, but that could be because they are line bred as well, because both male and female have got similar bloodline behind them. So you can't say that there's going to be a lot of difference in the pups anyway. Yep. It's only when you do an outcross that you can see the difference between your dogs and the dog you used over the bitch. You might be able to see the different traits there.
How closely do you find you like to line breed?
I think line breeding is very important if you want consistency in your dogs. But I think you probably got to be a bit careful not to go too close for too long. Otherwise, they say you lose stamina and you lose size. But for consistency, I think you have to do some line breeding. But when you do an outcross, though, you've got to try and go to a dog that's going to complement your dogs and not take away anything that you want to keep in your dog. It's a bit of a fine line, all that sort of thing. I believe it is. But I've been talking to a lot of stud ram breeders, a lot of stud bull breeders, and they all say they should breed from the most dominant ram or the most dominant bull. And I believe the same sort of thing with dogs. If you've got a dog that's a little bit over the top, a little bit hard to handle, I think he's the one you should be breeding from. Not that little fellow that just says, when you ask him to do something, he says, "Yes, boss."
Yeah.
You want that bloke that's going to answer you back. He's going to breed on better for you.
You're pretty modest in talking about influential dogs there. You didn't mention any of your own. You'd have to say Abba would have been pretty influential in the Karana camp, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Every bitch I've got at home at the moment, apart from the young ones, are by Abba.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was very influential. But that all started back with Seiko, though. Because Seiko was the dog that started it all for me. And then I lost my train of thought there.
No, you're all right. What made Abba? You said Abba started with Seiko, but what made Abba a special dog?
I was a bit lucky to get Abra actually, because I was breeding as a fellow by the name of Don Abra from over near Scone. He bought a bitch off me, and he used to keep bringing her over to my place to join her and breed pups, and we used to share the litter. And we did this, and he said to me one day, "How about we take this bitch to Michael Johnson's Buster, Bowlong Buster?" So I agreed to do that. So he brought her over, and we took her over and joined her to Buster. And he had the litter at his place, and he rang up one day and he said, "I've got a pup here for you." And I'd already had the pup sold over the phone. And when he dropped the pup off at my place, I put him on sheep. He was about 5 months old at the time. Put him on sheep, and I really liked him. And the fellow was going to ring back that night and let me know. I had two pups for him, that one which is 5 months, or another one which was about 8 or 9 months old, and another little one that was only just ready to go. He was only about 8 weeks old. And they were 3 different prices. So anyway, he rang back that night and he said, "Oh, if you don't mind, I'll just take the little 8-week-old fella. He's a little bit cheaper." And I just said to him, "Oh, that's all right. I don't mind." So that way I was able to keep the one I liked, the one called Abba. And I called him Abba because of Don Abra, the fellow that was the owner of the bitch, because I wanted a little bit of a connection there. And he's a marvellous dog, that dog. He's still alive, but he's having trouble with arthritis at the moment. He just learnt how to handle stock his own way. And he was a very brainy dog. He won 2 national copy trials himself, won this New South Wales Yard Dog. And he's a dog that breeds on very well as well. And Roy's a son of his, Corona Roy. And I think Roy is going to take up where Abba left off, I hope, with breeding good pups. Because I've got some good pups by him now, and a lot of other people have got some good pups by him. So let's hope that he keeps on producing those good ones as well.
Fantastic. And let's hope they keep going, mate. I hope you do keep breeding some more good pups out of that bloodline.
Well, you've got a sister to Abba anyway.
Well, I do. She's a pet these days.
What's that?
She's a pet these days. She lives with the children's mother, and so they bring her over every now and then when the kids come and stay with me for a week. Occasionally, I get a third kid, and apart from working soccer ball, she gets to work sheep, and she's not only a great work dog and a very keen work dog at that, but she's a great loyal companion as well. So she's the type of dog you put her in any situation, and she's just happy just to relax and chill and be part of the family. Or once she sees stock, she's happy to go to work. So
I actually made a mistake there. I said she was sister to Abba. She's actually sister to Roy, isn't she?
To Roy, correct? Yeah. My
mistake.
No, that's all right. She's given me a couple of handy pups as well, mate. So I'm happy to ride that bandwagon there.
Yeah, I'm pleased you've got that connection there.
Nah, thank you.
How do you go about starting a pup?
I've got a training mob of sheep which are very quiet. As soon as I see a dog, they'll come to me. But I start my pups off in what I call a big holding yard. I don't like small yards at all to start pups off. I use a big yard which is about 40 metres by 40 metres. And the idea of using a big area is so the dog can show me what their natural ability is. So I just let the little pup, and sometimes it's a whole litter. Sometimes I put the whole litter in the yard with the training mob and see what they do. And you don't ask them to do anything. You just allow them to do what they want to do. And they might just want to chase for a start. And that's what I call switching their motor on. So just let them chase the sheep around a little bit. And then the next time you bring them out, you might only put one in at a time instead of putting the whole litter in. And see what the little one does on his own. And hopefully what he'll start doing is actually following the head of the sheep and finish up going around and around the mob. And then once the pup starts going around and around, that's when I step in and start using what I call the block system, which I think you're all familiar with. So you block the pup and he goes back the other way. A lot of people use a garden rake, but I find a garden rake very stiff and hard to use. I've got a little nylon stick, which is only about half an inch thick. And I tie a little flag on the end of it. And it's the flag that you actually influence the pup with by waving the flag or tapping it on the ground. And I find it much more flexible than what a rake is. And it's suitable for all sorts of different pups. Like you might have a little soft pup that's he's easily offended. So you can be very gentle with the flag by leaving it on the ground and just maybe dragging around a little bit. And then you might have a more boisterous one that wants to run over top of you. Well, you can whack it on the ground and wave the flag around a lot and get him to take a bit of notice of you. So it's very flexible. First started off using branches off trees,
Yeah.
and then because I'm a bit of a greenie, I didn't like breaking branches off trees all the time. So I thought, well, I'll make one that I can keep on using. So that's why I used the stick with a little flag on the end of it.
Because you put so much thought into your breeding program, do you find it hard not to have expectations when you show your pup stock at the first time or the first couple of times?
Oh yeah, you if you have one that doesn't want to work, it's a bit disappointing. So you just take him away. You don't rouse on them for not working. You just take them away, give them a pat, take them away, bring them back again in a fortnight's time, and try and create a situation where the training mob or the stock you got the dog pup working on, that they run round. It's the movement of the stock that switches the pup on. So if the training mob are too tame and don't move enough, you got to go and get a few half-grown crossbred lambs and put in there with him, because you know that they're going to run around a bit. And it's usually the movement that switches them on and gets them going.
Yeah. So you've told us a bit of how you start your pups and what age, but how much effort do you put into your training after they've started?
It's not. I don't give them a lot of training. I don't do it often. I don't do it for long periods. I think the most important thing is watch your pup, learn from your pup what he wants, and give him the instructions or the encouragement that he needs, so that he develops his own style, and you're not trying to dominate and make him the same as your old dog was. Let your new pup be what he is going to be, not what you was hoping he was going to be if you wanted him to be like the old dog. I mean, we all hope that we're going to get a repeat of our old dog, but sometimes your pup will turn out even better than what the old dog was.
Yeah.
How do you know when a pup's ready or a dog is ready for more?
Oh, I think they tell you themselves when they're ready for more. They'll just gradually do more and more. And you put little tests on them every now and then. As mine start to do more and more work, I'll actually let them work the sheep right up onto the fence, nice and tight on the fence. And then I'll put myself in a position which gets the little pup to go around the back of the sheep. And that's a real test of strength itself, for the pup to squeeze his way along the fence in behind the sheep. So that's one of the little tests I do put on them as they're starting to develop their work.
Chris Shig has asked, chasing some advice on the transition from the training pen to doing small real jobs. What should I be looking for in my dog that tells me he's ready? And what can I do to help him be successful at doing some small jobs?
Well, because I've been training mine in the big yard, which is 40 metres by 40 metres, you're going to know by the time you let him out. Well, I'll only let him out in the open on the training mob anyway. You don't put him on a wild lot of sheep with little baby lambs on. You put him on your training mob outside in the open, and you were going to be fairly confident he's going to do the job properly for you. But you still treat it as a training situation. And then once you're confident that he can handle that, and he's probably not going to be, you're not going to do that at 6 months old. You're going to wait till he's probably 12 months old before you put him into a real work situation, where he's going to ask him to handle the mob on his own of sheep that are not dog broken. But you'll know from what he's done in the big yard whether he's ready or not to go out in the open. That's why I like a big yard.
We've got a couple of questions on cast here, so we might split it amongst them. So we've got Donna Lindley has asked, how do you go about getting a good cast on a dog?
Number one, breeding. The dog has to have cast in their breeding, and then you can exaggerate their cast with good training. And the way I do that is once the dog has been taught his left and his right, I'll get off centre and make the dog come my side when I'm off centre on the mob, make him come my side. So you've got to get wider to get around me, to get around the other side of the mob. And that's all still done in the training yard, the big training yard, because you've got room to do it in there. But then as the pup gets older, you do that out in the open and you exaggerate it even more and more. And when the pup's old enough to be able to accept you cracking a whip at him, I'll actually crack the whip when he's directly level with me on his outrun going out around the sheep. If you do it too soon, you're going to pull him up. And if you do it too late, it's not going to have any effect. So you've got to do it at just the right time when he's directly at 40, half the circle. Bit hard to describe it. But when he's halfway there, basically, as he's coming past you. Yeah. So because you've taught him left or right, you can actually get off centre and direct him to come around you, which makes him come wider.
Bailey Stapleton has asked, how do you go about getting the searching instinct strong when starting out with a young dog?
Well, I've got these 2 5-month-old pups at home at the moment that I let them out for a run every morning while I'm having breakfast. And they've got that way now that they go and find my training mob. And the training mobs are quite often in different places. They might be up behind the machinery shed, or they might be over behind the dam, or they could be down the little paddock where they normally run. And these 2 pups have got that way now that they go looking for them. So to me, that's their first learning of searching for stock. And they're doing that without me being there. And some people probably frown on that, but they're not doing any harm. They're actually learning from it, I think. But when you talk about, as the dog gets older, though, there are other ways you can get them to search up into the hill country. And I think in that article that I wrote for your magazine,
You explained it well.
I described how you, first of all, you work the sheep up into the hills, into the timber with the dog. Just wait till they disappear and then send your dog after them so the dog knows where they are. And then each time you do that, you wait a bit longer till the sheep are further away. And that way they learn to search for sheep in the country where you can't see the sheep or the dog can't see the sheep when he first starts. So they learn by, first of all, when you're doing it that way, they've got a fresh smell of where the sheep have been. They can still hear the sheep moving through the scrub, and they can probably using their nose and their ears to work it all out.
Yeah. And thanks for writing that article, mate. And anyone wanting to read about that, you find that in the March issue of the Australian Working Stock Dog magazine, and you see a nice little picture of Kev in there as well. So, thanks for that, Kev. We appreciate that the effort you went to describe that.
That's fine.
How would you describe what feel looks like in a dog?
People have got a different idea about feels. Everybody's got their own opinion on it. Feel is a little bit like breakout and cast. It's actually inherited from one dog to another. You can't put feel in a dog that hasn't got feel, but you can make them bring it out a little bit more with a few signals like stops and stays and steadies and that sort of thing. That'll allow the dog to understand that you only want them to be more careful. And feel is something that you'll see in a pup, even when he's only little, you'll notice it if he's actually got it. He's not the one that's going to come in like a bulldozer. He's the one that's going to sort of read the sheep a bit and watch them and not do anything at all for a while until he needs to.
Very right. I've got a question here from Mark Mangold. Do you think you can have too much cast that is too big and wide?
Never.
Yeah.
There are times when you want to get things done in a hurry. So you will actually try and narrow your cast down, but that can be done. Once you're a bit more experienced at what you're doing, you can actually give the dog the indicator to go a certain way, and rather than ask him to get right out, you'll turn your body a different way and make him cast narrower. It's a bit hard to describe how to do it. I can show you how to do it, but it's a bit hard to describe how to do it.
That's all right. Well, I'll hit you up around a campfire one night, mate. So, how long have you been trialing, Kevin?
Kay and I talked about that the other night. I think it's around about 38 years. Yeah,
Jeez, that'd be 1983, mate.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that'd be right. I can vouch for
it.
That's a good vintage, that one.
Oh, righto. About when you were born, was it?
It was, mate. It was.
You're only a
So
baby.
you've obviously done a little bit of every style of trialing. What one has been your favourite?
What trial has been my favourite?
What style of trialing? Like, you do a bit of free sheeping, yards, utility, had a crack at cattle. What's your preference?
Obviously prefer the utility trial because that's the type of dog that I try to breed, is the utility dog.
Yep.
And it's a much bigger thrill, I believe. Well, I feel a bigger thrill when I win a utility trial than what I do when I win a yard trial. I think there's a lot of skill involved in utility type trialing. There's a lot of skill in all trials, but I think to me, I enjoy utility trials the best. I enjoy three sheep trials as well, and I enjoy yard trials. I've got a competitive nature. That's why I like all trials. I grew up being a sports person, so I've always had a competitive nature, and that's got a little bit to do with why I trial. But one of the other reasons why I trial is because I want to compare my dogs with other people's dogs, and I want to keep an eye out for that special dog that I might want to use as a sire or get a pup from a bitch, whichever the case may be.
Is there something that you see handlers struggle with, and where do you believe they can improve?
Probably reading sheep. Like a lot of the young handlers have trouble reading their sheep, and a lot of that comes from not enough experience in the work situation. So about the only way that people that don't actually work stock for a living can get that experience is to go somewhere, go to a friend's place that does work stock for a living and go and help them for a day or help them for a week or help them at shearing time or something like that. And you'll learn from that how to read sheep. And that's one of the things you need to do. You need to understand why sheep do what they do. I mean, some sheep do things that you can't even predict, but most sheep are predictable.
In your time, have you noticed a change in the way people handle stock and dogs away from trialing? And do you think it's for the better?
It's definitely for the better.
Trialing's had an influence on it?
It's definitely for the better. And a lot of that comes from these training schools that a lot of people are putting on, and the dog trials that people are coming along and watching. People are learning from all those. So that's why I think dog handling has improved a lot for those reasons. when I was working in the sale yards, when I first went there, I went there with my utility type dogs, which all the other fellas there with their mad yapping dogs. They said to me, how are your eye dogs going to get on working here? You know, this is a real work situation here. And I said, well, we'll find out, won't we? And they realised after a while that dogs with control and that would bark only when they're asked to and in the right position at the right time got the job done a lot better, a lot more efficiently than what their team of mad yapping dogs that were always in the wrong place. They found out that worked a lot better. And I was there for 8 years, and I found at the end of the 8 years that a lot of those fellas there were working their dogs totally different to what they were the first year I went there.
Yep.
So I think that just watching the different style of dog, they learnt from that.
And do you think
they slowed their own dogs down.
Yeah. And do you think the level, like we spoke before about like intelligence in dogs, do you think the level of intelligence of dogs has some differ in that as well? Like some dogs that are happy to bark a lot as well don't have the same thought process as a dog that is more biddable?
Yeah, that's true. I believe it's true. A dog that's barking like mad with his tail up in the air is basically got his brain switched off, I think. It's the dog with his tail down and watching what's happening and only barking when he's asked to or when he thinks he needs to. That's the dog that's thinking about what the job is in front of him. It's more effective to like a bark on command or a bark when the dog thinks he needs to works much better than a continuous bark all the time. Because the handler gets sick of it, the sheep get sick of it, and the sheep finish up, they just bottle up and won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, bark on command is a bit like shock treatment. It just works like a shock treatment thing. Just get the dog in the right place and get him to bark, and just away they go.
Bailey Stapleton has asked, how do you give your more paddock type dogs enough strength in the yards to back and stand up to sheep that turn on them?
How do we give them enough strength, you say?
Yeah.
Hopefully you've bred that in there.
And if you haven't, I think he's more asking about training. So a dog that's a bit more paddocky, how would you give it a bit more strength to back itself? Like how would you train that into a dog that may not have it there genetically or it might be second guessing itself?
Oh, you mean build its confidence?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Basically, let it have a win. Like, make sure that they're not being worked on rams or crossbred ewes that got little lambs on them or something like that might come out and give them a bit of a thump. Start them off on, say, half-grown sheep that are easy to move, that have got a fear of a dog. So the pup learns that if he comes in, the sheep's going to move away from him. And just let his confidence build up that way.
Very good answer.
Thank you.
Mate, if you had the opportunity to make a change in any form of trialling, what would it be?
I think trialling's in a very good place at the moment. The three sheep triallers they've been doing that for many, many years, and the people that designed that trial really put a lot of thought into it. And that trial tests the dog out in a lot of different areas. It tests them in their cast, it tests them in their footwork, tests them in their strength on the bridge. So whoever designed the three sheep trial really knew what he was doing. So I think that trial is as good as what it's ever going to get. Yard trialling's in a good place too. When I first started trialling, yard trialling were only, each yard was only a tiny little yard, about 10 foot square or 3 meters square. I'm one of the older fellas. And the sheep came out of the drench race into the back of the draft area and didn't go back out in the open at all. Whereas I think now that when sheep are drafted off, they go back out in the open, they have to be picked up again. That shows more outside type work. And then when you get into the tight spots like bench race, draft and the truck platform, it shows the hard, tough work. So that pretty well covers all that you expect of an all-round yard type dog. So I think yard trials are in a good place at the moment too. And when you combine the 3-sheep trial and the yard trial together in one trial as a utility trial, well, you've got a good trial there as well, which tests the dog out in all sorts of areas. So I think I can't think of any way that you could improve trials at the moment.
Yeah, and we're seeing a bit of an uptake in cattle trialling in New South Wales of recent times. What's your take on that?
That's probably a good thing for those that have to work cattle and want to work cattle. I'm not keen on working cattle myself. My dogs, to me, are too valuable to get hurt. So I've got no intentions of ever working in a cattle trial ever again.
Yep.
For that reason, I believe that's why Abba's got so much trouble at the moment with his arthritis, because he got rolled at Trafalgar one year with one of those black cows rolled him along the ground for a while, and I don't think that did him much good.
Yep.
Fair enough. Do you have a favourite trial to participate in?
Obviously, the National Copy Trial is my favourite. You're competing against the best utility dogs there is.
Have you had any luck in those?
I think you know the answer to that one, Dan. Yeah. No, the National Copy Trial definitely. The trial that I aim for every year. I don't think I've missed one now for a long time.
Guys, we just frozen there for a sec. So, we got Kev.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. You just froze there for a minute.
Oh, I was just saying that the National Copy Trial is obviously my favourite trial, and I think it's many years since I've missed one. I've been going to one every time there's one on. I go to it.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. We just lost you for a second there. We had a bit of poor service. You were talking about utility, the National Copper Fuel Trial.
Yeah, that's my favourite trial. You asked me what my favourite trial was, so that is my favourite
yes.
trial.
Yeah, and have you, with the scorecard like you have, mate, have you missed one?
Have I missed a copy trial?
Yeah.
Yeah. When was it? 1994. I missed one.
Yeah. Okay. So you really like them, mate. Do you consider them a holiday when you get out and do that, chase your utility trials and make the most of what you can while you're away?
Kay doesn't consider it a holiday at all. She said the only way to have a real holiday is leave the dogs at home.
Yeah, there's no fun in that.
No.
So will you be heading to Tasmania this year?
Sorry?
Will you be heading down to Tasmania for it this year?
Yeah, Kay's got the boat booked and the caravan booked up to hire when we get over there. So, yeah, we're heading over to Tassie. Got to do a bit of training before then.
Good luck with it all. Might I have another one to add to that list?
Try to. Yeah, I want number 10.
Yeah, I will. There, go for it, mate. You said you're very competitive. Well, that's that streak coming out in you there. But when starting out, was it? Sorry.
Yeah, you were saying something about competitive, were you?
Yeah, I said you said earlier that you're very competitive. So another 10. That goes to show your competitive streak.
Yeah, Gary White said to me when I was at Ningen at his trial last time, he said, "You'd rather die than give away a point out there on the field, wouldn't you?"
Did you answer it?
Yeah, I think the way I try and save every point was answered him well enough. He's a great fella, Gary, and he's a great great fella to compete against, and he takes it all in the right way. Like, he encourages you, and he's happy when you win. And I'm the same way with him. When he wins, I'm happy that he wins.
That's what sports is all about, isn't it? Good sportsmanship.
That's right.
And mate, starting out, in trialing, who inspired you?
Nobody inspired me when I first started out. I was always keen on dogs, and when I went to this demonstration at the Orange Field Day, that made me even keener to get involved in dogs. So what I started doing was I'd go around to the trials and just sit on the sideline as a spectator, and learnt from that. And then after a while started going along to the trials and having a bit of a go, and learnt more from that, and just watched all the top trials of the day and watched what they did and how they worked their dog and what their dog did to actually get the job done, and learnt from that.
So you've obviously been very successful. Do you have a most memorable moment though?
Yeah, Kay and I were talking about that this afternoon. There's actually 3. Can I mention 3?
Definitely.
You can mention 4 if you like, mate.
Well, obviously when Digger won his 3rd National Copy Championship, that was a very memorable moment. And I couldn't even talk to Kay on the phone because I was crying too much, which sounds crazy for a bloke. But anyway,
that's all right.
that's the way it affected me. Because Kay didn't come with me to that trial. That was in Victoria. So that was when Digger won his 3rd national, which no other dog has ever done, and no other dog has ever done it since. So that's one of my number one things. The other number one was when I come 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in the Australian yard at Toowoomba in Queensland.
Yep.
And that's never been done before and never been done since. So that's a pretty good one. And then when we came home from there, we were home a few days and went to the Orange Field Day and competed in the New South Wales Utility Championships that used to be at the Orange Field Day in those days. And I came 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th there.
Yeah.
And nobody stayed to watch the final. I don't know why.
Can I ask you something, Kev? You can be honest if you want. When you did come 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, did you have a favourite dog that you wanted to win, or did you just take out each dog and run on its own merit?
I'll take out each dog and run them on their merit.
Yep.
Because the time that I came 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in the Australian yard, my old dog Seiko was going to be his last trial, and he actually came equal 1st with his brother in that Australian Yard Dog Championship, and he'd never won an Australian Yard Dog Championship, old Seiko. He'd won New South Wales one, but he'd never won the Australian. So I had the opportunity to pull up his brother, which is called Stubby, Grana Stubby.
Yeah.
I could have pulled him up and let Seiko win that one, but I didn't. I worked them both on their merits on the day, and Stubby came out the winner, and my poor old mate Seiko came 2nd. And then another old dog I had called Chad, he came 3rd.
I don't think Seiko can complain with 3 National Copy Field Trials under his belt.
That was a that was
That was Digger.
Oh, sorry, that was Digger. Sorry.
that was Seiko. Digger won the Copy one.
Yeah,
that was a way back though. That was in 2001 that year. Yeah, so a lot of you younger fellas wouldn't have known anything about that.
2000. That was the year after the Olympics, wasn't it?
That was the year after I was born. Is there a message you'd like to get out into the working dog community?
Yeah, sometimes you see dogs that are not cared for very well. And I'd like to see dogs get cared for better than what they are by some people. Most people are good, but there are some that are not so good.
I think that's a good message to get out, mate.
Yeah.
A very good message. Right, and away from dogs, do you have a talent or a hobby that people wouldn't really know about?
No, I was a very keen sportsman before I went trialing, but none of that anymore. But the good part, one of the good things about dog trials is you can still do that as you get older, because the dogs are the one doing all the hard work. So I can still compete with you young fellas, even though I'm twice your age.
That's all right. I just hope to get halfway there, mate. I'll be happy, and a little bit more will be a bonus again.
No, it's good that all you young fellas doing what you're doing.
Is there anything you'd like would you like to see introduced to Dog Talk?
I think you're doing a great job. It's a credit to you what you are doing. It's modern technology that I know nothing about, but I'm pleased you people do, because you're getting the word out there amongst people that are interested, and I think good on you. Keep it up.
No, thank you.
I can't. I've got no suggestions to make anything any better, because you people are the ones that know all that sort of thing.
Well, if something does come up, mate, don't be afraid to shout out and let us know. And just while you do mention modern technology there, we'd actually like to thank you, because people that don't haven't realised Kevin's actually not at home today because his internet service wasn't good enough. So he's actually gone into town and borrowed a computer and some Wi-Fi off a friend in town there. So not only would we like to thank Kevin for putting yourself out, but also your friends there for being hospitable to you tonight.
Yeah, it was very good of them to do that. And then the good part about that was the young fella Shane is a bit of a computer man, so he made sure everything was going to work right. So that was a great thing for them to do for us.
It's people like you that help us grow Dog Talk, and we really appreciate you getting on, stepping out of your comfort zone and getting on. We really appreciate it, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just hope everything went okay.
No, you're going all right.
Still got a couple more questions for you yet.
Oh, okay. I'm not off the hook yet.
Not yet. Is there anyone you'd like us to sit down and do a Q&A with?
Yeah, there is one fellow that I think would probably be very good for this. Pip Hudson. I don't think you've had Pip yet, have you?
No, we haven't.
Not yet.
No, Pip's very good. Pip's a very good, very experienced dog man. He's got a lot of opinions of his own, which will come across pretty well, I think. Yeah, I think Pip would be a good fella to have on.
No, thank you, mate. We'll have a chat to Pip. And to be honest with you, when we first wanted to kick off Dog Talk, our vision was to actually hit the road and be able to go out and talk to a lot of people. But COVID put a pretty big halt on that, to be honest. So what it saved us in fuel, it made us a bit more tech savvy. But Pip was on our radar then, and I'm glad you mentioned it, mate, because let's see if we can organise to get him on one night.
Yeah, Pip and I used to do training schools together in the early days. Pip would do the 3-sheep type training, and I'd do the yard type training, and we had some great times together. He's a real.
Did you get much training done in between the laughter?
No, he's a marvelous man, that Pip. He could remember. Pip could remember everybody's names and every dog, all their dogs' names. And I used to struggle just with the people's names without trying to remember their dogs' names.
I remember dogs and forget people. So at least you got to remember the people. Mate, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Pip's a great fella and a great entertainer as well.
He is, mate. He is. Mate, it's come to that time of the night. Mate, there are a few questions there tonight. Was there anything that stood out for you and they will win the bag of Enduro Plus working dog food?
Oh, I think the best one is Chris Egan.
Chris Egan?
Yeah, when he asked all those questions, but all pretty much every question he asked, he basically covered it. The answer was covered by the question, basically.
Yeah, he must put a lot of thought into that, knowing Chris. So,
He did.
Chris, if you want to get in touch with us, mate, there'll be a bag of Enduro Plus working dog coming your way.
Last question of the night. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
I think I'd compare that to a mob of sheep. I'd rather fight the 20 horses the size of ducks, I think.
Answered very well. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Kev. We appreciate it, and going out of your way. I'm sure you probably haven't done anything like this before, and like you said, technology isn't your forte. So we really appreciate your time.
Thank you for asking me. It was an honour to do it for you.
Matt, you're more than welcome.
Thanks again, and thank you to all of our viewers for tonight. We appreciate you all getting on and listening to it back on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thanks again, and we're looking forward to a great 2022.
And please remember, we learn every day from each other, and the day we stop learning from each other will be a sad one for all of us.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kev.
Thank you. Good night.